All right, well, we can go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. My name is Nicole Harris. Most people know me by Nick, or Nick the editor, and I'm so happy to be presenting this discussion with you this evening. To tell you a little bit about our guest, we have Garbo Watson Hearne. She is the director of Pyramid Art, Books, Custom Framing, and Hearne Fine Art, and I will let her talk about all of that here in a second. What we're going to be talking about today is African American bookstores, especially in this time where people are really actively researching things and looking for books to read, to soak up all the knowledge that they can. We want to be sure that we're not just supporting our local bookstores, but when possible, the Black-owned bookstores across the area, across the country. So Garbo, I'm going to give you a moment to introduce yourself and let people know who you are.
Okay, well, Garbo Hearne, I am the director of Pyramid Art, Books, and Custom Framing and Hearne Fine Art. Our focus is African American culture through literature and fine art. So we represent local, regional, national, and international artists and authors. So when you come to our space, you have an experience because you're surrounded by beautiful art, and we have over 6,000 titles in our store. So we're really excited about the opportunities that we are affording our artists and authors around the country. We just celebrated 32 years. We opened in June of 1988, so really proud to be sustainable at this, especially during this time, and to be a support base for our community.
Okay. So I was looking at your bio, and you have a pretty impressive background. So in addition to creating a statewide arts advocacy organization, and just being active and being a social activist in your community, you are actually first a nurse practitioner.
Yeah, that was my first love. When I was 10 years old, I had made a decision I was going to be a nurse. I did the candy striper thing all throughout high school, went to college, finished that, got my degree, and ended up working in an intensive care unit at a children's hospital. Then I went and worked in the community, and when I got married, my husband, who is actually started collecting art at a young age, there was not an art gallery in the city, and it was one of the things that he was really passionate about. So it's like, if you don't have it, then go build it, because it was definitely something that was needed. And then we expanded and added books. We added the service of custom picture framing. Then we added fine art. So it's a business that's evolved over the years. But of course, I still keep my nursing license. I still keep up with what's going on in the medical world, because that's always something that you need just for yourself and for your family. So I'm really still pleased that I did spend that time getting that education. But as you know, education is lifelong.
Right. And I don't think we pointed it out, but you are in Little Rock, Arkansas, correct?
I am. I'm in the Dunbar historic community. We're located right across the street from Dunbar Junior High School. It's one of the oldest schools in our community, just celebrated 90 years. It used to be a junior college and a high school, and it's the only place that Black children could go to school at that time. So I'm in a really good place now. This is my 4th location, and hopefully my last. Moving is never fun, but I'm really pleased to be in the heart of a Black community.
Gotcha. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. First, just tell us, how did the concept of Black-owned bookstores begin?
Well, I mean, we're independent booksellers, and when you find yourself going into a large chain and then you see a shelf or just a bookshelf relegated to your culture, then you get an itch to know that there's so many books out there in so many genres that are not represented per se in that one space, even though they may be mingled throughout the store. But it's just a good feeling to be part of a platform where you are sharing the history of your culture and all different opinions. And we have so much access to information, and we're also a platform for authors, because everybody has a book. I mean, you have a book in you. Now, will you sit down and write it? Will you publish it? And will you take that book? Will it be accepted by a major publisher? Everybody has to start somewhere.
And really with anything else, you know, you hear it sometimes when there are a certain group of people say, well, why do we need a Black college? Why do we need a Black store? And although I feel like that may be common sense to you and I, but can you talk a little bit about why it's important to have stores like yours?
For me, it's important because I think historically speaking, it used to be against the law for Blacks to read. You know, we were not allowed to read, and those of us that were able to read, I mean, we were sought out. So I think that the privilege of owning a store, a bookstore, is very important. And I feel like, you know, having a platform where I welcome people of color to come and share their experiences. You know, I want you to have an intimate opportunity to come and see books that you probably wouldn't see anywhere else. So I think that, you know, every week people share their books with me and we review books. And as books come out, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's not overwhelming. It's exciting whenever a new book comes out. And then you meet a new author. I mean, it's just an adrenaline rush to be able to have that experience and to share with children. We do a what we call a baobab story time. Behind me is our baobab tree that we had created by Atlanta artist Alfred Conte, because to me it's our unique experience of having a knowledge tree, because knowledge is power. Undoubtedly, the more you know, the more you read, the more you experience, the more you'll be able to enjoy your life. It's my belief. And when you have children, I want, with my children, I read to them, I read with them, they saw me reading. So I think that that plays a really big part in raising your children and making sure that you have a well-rounded child is by exposing them to the opportunities of reading. And, you know, libraries are definitely my friend, you know, because you definitely don't have to own every book, but the library is a good place to experience other perspectives that you may not buy. But I'm all in for people having personal libraries. So, you know, that's our part, is to help you build that library.
One of the things we talked about before we actually started going live is the convenience of everything. Everybody wants something now. You know, if I want a book, I can pick up my phone, go to Amazon, click it, it can be here tomorrow. But why is it important to, I don't want to say stay away from companies like Amazon, but to really, really make sure we're trying to support our local bookstores?
I think when you make a decision to support a small business, or specifically a Black-owned bookstore, I mean, right now there are 48 of us in the United States. When I opened, I think there were 138 in 1988. And, you know, they're declining. We are declining, not just Black bookstores, but independent booksellers, because it's hard to compete with the large chains, and definitely someone who's offering, you know, the book at the prices and right to your door free. So it's a conscious decision that you make when you support a Black-owned bookstore or independent bookstore. And I think it's important, because of the intimate experience that we offer, that you're not going to get when that package is just dropped at your doorstep. You know, you don't have that opportunity to engage with authors. I mean, I think it's a conscious decision that you go to a bookstore for the experience as well as to support and also leave with a book.
Like one of those things where you, like you said, you have to make that decision. Am I going to go to Amazon, or am I going to, you know, buy from this local bookstore? And I know that you've been on a lot of lists recently with people itching to learn more and buy more books of Black-owned bookstores in the country. How has that impacted your business, having this new influx of customers?
It's really been bittersweet. I think, you know, with what's happening with our Black people and the police force and things that have happened, and also with the pandemic, it's brought a lot of things to the table that people were not necessarily focusing on. So now it's like, how did I miss this? How did I not know what was going on in this community that I'm not necessarily a part of? I'm just like watching. So I want to educate myself. So we have had an influx of business because of the pandemic and because of people wanting to get more educated about culture and just, understanding what's been happening for many years. I mean, we have been, I think, a disrespected people from the beginning when we were enslaved, and understanding that we are more than that every other year slave movie that comes out. We come from kings and queens. Our history is so vast that it's going to take more than one movie to tell our story.
And for those of you tuning in, if you see me looking away, I'm actually monitoring the live as well as the chat here. We definitely want to open the floor for questions, so you can use that chat function to type in any question you may have, and we'll definitely get to your question. Now, you mentioned something about all of the people coming, all of the people wanting to learn. As a Black woman, I have white allies who are coming and asking, what book should I read? Well, how do I do this? And how did you learn this? And sometimes it gets exhausting trying to explain to people, well, here's what you should read. Here's what you could do. And so what advice do you have to those of us who are really being looked at to provide this information to other people?
We'll always turn it back on to them and say, what's the last thing you read about your culture? What is the last book you actually read and that you enjoyed? And that way you kind of get an idea of, do they need to start at the beginning, or are they midway through? I mean, I think it's very personal what direction you take people in terms of reading. I always tell people, you don't know what you exactly are interested in reading. Let's start with going to the library. Of course, can't go to the library because of the pandemic, but I always like to start with a history book. Stamped from the Beginning is one of the best ones that I think takes you from the beginning to a certain point. And How to Be an Anti-Racist has really been a popular book that we've sold quite a bit of. But I think it's a very personal thing, and just seeking out what interests you, that you will not just be a knee-jerk reaction because everybody's reading this. If you're reading to actually learn something and change how you think and change your focus, or is it just a conversation to be, I don't want to get involved in all that.
Right. Yeah. Tell us about some of your favorite books.
Well, I love children's books. I mean, I think that children's books are one of the easiest ways to just learn history. I think Kadir Nelson is one of my favorite illustrators. I think he's done some beautiful baby books. He's done an African American history book. He's just did Undefeated with Kwame Alexander, which I think is a great book. Fiction, I love to just fall away and just read some books. What's the last book I read? Fiction. Rashonda Tate Billingsley. I love to read her series and just have some fun reading. I think reading can take you to any point of the earth. I like reading travel books. My book stand is full of books that I review, books from local authors, and then of course when books come in, just to see what's coming out. So it's just I can't say I have a favorite book, but I like to read across all genres.
Gotcha. Kind of circling back to what we talked about, in that wanting books now type of thing. There are plenty of book clubs, across the internet, across the country. I think Camille is on the call. Camille has a pretty popular club called Booked and Busy. So each month they read a book together and then they have a virtual discussion about it. So how can groups like Booked and Busy, how can they work directly with Black-owned independent sellers like yours to make sure not only are they reading these books and getting the knowledge, but also supporting your business?
Well, we have an online presence. We have a website that you can buy books from, and you can always call us and tell us which direction your bookstore, your book club is going in. And, we like to give suggestions. We also host a lot of book club gatherings. So, having that online presence always helps, and having those personal conversations to how is your book club structured? Are you reading the same book, or is everybody picking a book in a certain area and then you come together and discuss it? So it's so many ways to keep a book club interesting. But I think that contacting us, going to our website and our online presence is a good way to support us, because we ship books all over the United States. And we do give discounts if you buy 5 or more. And we like to be ahead of the game. So if you know what you're reading 3 months in advance, we have the book ready, so it's, we ship it out. So there's lots of ways to support us.
In your time as an independent bookseller, what has been one of your biggest hurdles?
Well, I think it's making sure that you have variety, that you don't get, that your bookstore doesn't become stale, that you have that balance of the classics that you must have reads, and then the ones that, the new books that are coming out, as well as supporting your local community, to making sure that you provide that platform for them to share their story. And the programming is, keeping, knowing what you're doing next week, what are you doing next month, what are you doing 6 months from now. So making sure your schedule is fresh, and that you keep people interested in what you're doing.
Another thing we chatted about briefly is how a lot of these locally owned bookstores are closing because people are not supporting them. And really, if you could just reiterate that, because that's the biggest thing I want people to get out of this, is if you don't support stores like Pyramid Art and Books, then they're not going to be there.
Right.
So can you go a little bit further into why it's truly important to really focus on supporting small stores?
Because I think that it's so important that you support a small independent bookstore, because they provide an intimate experience. They provide a platform for you or your friends. Like I said, everybody has a book in them. And so it's always good to have that opportunity to go and share, and then understanding our history. I mean, knowing our authors like Paul Laurence Dunbar, Langston Hughes, James Baldwin, those kind of, having those classics available for you, Miseducation of the Negro. Those are just classics that everybody should have. So if you may not think that it's that important until it's gone, you can't take a space for granted. So I think it's understanding your history and knowing the importance of continuing to educate yourself and making sure your children know who they are. I think is one of the biggest things that we do here, is that we cater to children. I mean, we have story times, and during our story times, we talk about nutrition. We talk about, having library cards and manners. We don't give out candy, we give out fruit at the end of the session. And, we have a group of kids, and if we don't have our fruit, they're like, what happened? Where's my apple? Where's my orange? So I think making that impression and being consistent, and having that opportunity to be consistent with a group of patrons, and, opening it up, being online and having the opportunity to converse with people, and opportunities like this to be in front of an audience that may not know we exist. If you don't have a Black-owned bookstore in your community, to seek one out and, and support.
Is there ever the opportunity, you mentioned children and parents making sure their children have all the knowledge that they can. Another thing we hear a lot as adults in our 30s or is that, oh, we never learned this in school. Well, nobody ever taught me about this. Is there ever the opportunity for you to work with the school systems or work with teachers to make sure that the kids are learning this information and not just having to find it on their own?
Yeah, we do have relationships with our local school districts, and around Arkansas, we do provide professional development books. We also have a book list that, what you should be reading, what's new in African American literature. So that's very important, to develop those relationships with media specialists who may not have the time to go out and do the research, and making sure they have that balance of the historical pieces that they should have in their library and new books that are coming out as well. So that's a big part of our business, is to keep those lines of communication open. And as I said, as a parent, it's your responsibility to make sure your child knows who they are and where they come from. You can't leave it up to the teachers at school, because if you have a child who knows that he is smart, he knows that he is special, he knows the importance of education, you know that when that child goes to school, he's going to act a certain way, because he has a certain type of pride in him, that what he wants to represent you well. And if it starts young, it's only going to improve and make a better person in our society, because that's our goal, is to be tolerant of everyone and understand everyone's point of view, in a sense. And reading is really the only way to get there.
And again, I want to remind people, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, there is a Q&A feature. You can type those in and we'll definitely address them. I think my last question is going to be, where do you see independent booksellers in 10 years?
Well, I think that independent booksellers have got to figure out how to make sure their online presence is effective. I think, programming is going to be very important in the next 6 months. I mean, Zoom presentations with authors. I don't think we're going to have that much in-person opportunities, just to be on the safe side. But I think that our programming and continuing the communication with authors and with the industry itself, I think we have to make sure that we're at the forefront, and we get all the publications, and we keep ourselves knowledgeable. And I think that's how we're going to stay abreast and stay alive. And I think that our patrons, we've got to be able to reach all areas, all genres, in terms of making sure that the elderly are taken care of, middle-aged, people who are retired. So it's kind of just keeping your ear to the ground as to what's going on, and be on the cutting edge, and be aware when books are coming out, and be that informative partner in the community. We work with sororities and fraternities, book clubs. I mean, every day we get some type of offer to come out and do a program or help, facilitate what should we be reading, that kind of thing. We do a lot of opportunities with churches when they have graduations. We always push giving a child a book, or giving a book, because that, again, it sounds trite, but a book is something that you can open over and over again, and it never gets old. So, and I'm just excited to be a bookseller, because while I understand electronics and Kindles and all that, but when those chargers go out, you got a book in your hands. So I always say, I'm a proponent of wherever you go, have a book in your purse, in your car. So when you have that downtime, you can just, soak some knowledge in.
Okay. We do have one question from Erin. She says, I am an LRSD teacher. The district is offering one optional unpaid training during the summer to incorporate anti-racist practices. This is clearly not enough. Could you be a partner with schools and/or the district to provide more resources for students and teachers?
Certainly. And I think that it's about also offering the opportunity to give them the right instruction and the right books to use, but introducing them to authors, because the programming is going to be the key to making sure it sticks, that it's not just a knee-jerk reaction, because that's the thing to do, is to do some long-term programming that you stick with. So definitely we are open to helping and doing that. So.
This is a quiet bunch. I actually expected more questions, but I think we've all during this time have soaked up so much information from you today, and this has just been really wonderful. So as we wrap up, unless there are any more questions, I want you to, if there are any closing words that you have or anything that we didn't touch on, I definitely want you to tell us that, but also to give us your information, where you're located and where people can find you.
Okay, so we're located again in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're at 1001 Wright Avenue. We're on the corner of Wright and Chester in Little Rock, Arkansas. We have our website is pyramid1988.com. You can email me at pyramidartbooks@gmail.com. You can call me at 501-372-5824. So we're available at any time. Email us, call us. We are always open to answering any questions and helping you navigate through any issues you have with literacy, or if you're an up-and-coming author. We're always interested in receiving new books. We have a book review process that we look at the book first, and we do books on consignment, and we can be your platform online and, bringing people into the store, because I'll tell you, one of my most exciting experiences has been when we worked with Elin Harris. I don't know if you remember him. He was from Little Rock, and he used to sell books out of the back of his car, and our bookstore was one of the first bookstores that he did a book signing, and he never forgot us. When he made it, it was had a major publisher. He always demanded that his first book signing be in Little Rock, and they were like, we want it to be in New York, and then he said, nope, it's got to be in Little Rock. So I always appreciate his loyalty and how much he made sure that the independent bookstore stayed alive. So that's why I'm saying that everybody has a book in them, and everybody who wants to be a writer and make it, you can actually do it. It's just a matter of being steadfast and making sure that you do a quality project.
For those of you who didn't quite catch her information about the store, if you registered for the webinar, you'll be getting a follow-up email. If you're following the event on Facebook, the information will also be there. This was amazing. Again, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to you making a visit from Memphis to Little Rock.
Yes, I'm coming as soon as COVID is over.
I know.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.